So I'm going through a box of weird stuff that I had left over from teaching that's just been a box when I had to clean out my classroom 5 years ago. And this isn't even mine, but if you're in the need for a toga party outfit, I'm your guy. I have the hookup. So just FYI. Or perhaps Michelle needs fabric to match her jackets. I've got that too. Authentic chopsticks with with etchings legitimately from China. A hacksaw. An old school handy cam from the library that I never returned, the school library. And obviously Looney Tunes stickers. What the hell? It's gonna get weird. Welcome to this episode of the 411.
I'm Diana.
I'm Marcus.
I'm Michelle.
And I'm Chris. And we are celebrating our very own Diana Gill's book, Copyrighteous. Diana, tell us about your book.
Yay! So Copyrighteous is a message that's really about kind of three things. It's about finding your own voice as an educator through creating your own instructional materials. It is about supporting one another and sharing. And it is about doing all of that through the lens of responsible creativity. And I'm so excited to share the Copyrighteous message with the world.
So in tonight's episode, we're going to really hit on one of those key points in Copyrighteous, and that is sharing. I know me personally, as an educator, I wouldn't be where I am today if not for sharing. But it's not always positive. I've also had things kind of taken without my permission. So it is a tricky topic. So tell us a little bit about how sharing has impacted you as an educator.
For me, I feel like there should be a sort of a common courtesy, if you will, a mutual respect amongst all educators in terms of just understanding and respecting that, fellow educators put hard work into creating content. And if I'm going to use it or want to use it, or it has inspired me to create something, I want to, whenever possible, try to reach out to that educator if I can and make contact and let them know that I respect their work and I'm appreciative of what they've created. And if there's a desire on my part to use any of that or part of that, then I want to go through the process of asking that person. So I actually do have an example of this that I'd like to share a little bit later.
Yeah, and one of the things I'm thinking about as I hear you talk is I do a lot of sharing, especially now in my career, but there were definitely times in my career where I was doing a lot of the using of things that people were sharing with me. And so I think one of the things that's important for us to remember is to kind of give ourselves and each other grace. While creating a culture of sharing is really important, I think part of that culture is letting others know it's okay to be a receiver in phases, I guess is my point.
Would you guys say it's also fair, though, that, I'm someone, I share a lot, but there are certain things that I create as a speaker, as a writer, that I don't want to share, or if I want to control where that sharing comes from. And so I'll often use Creative Commons licenses to be really specific about how I want my work used or not used. And I feel like it's okay for us to set those boundaries too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, if we're being really honest, there are some challenges to sharing, or things that have happened that make us apprehensive, or a feeling of vulnerability that makes us reluctant to share. And certainly, like, considering those things that you talked about, like managing the terms of how your things are used or changed, can help out with that.
Yeah, and as a creator, it is challenging, and sometimes I'll create something and share, my slides to the audience and say, take it all, use it all, with the expectation that they're still giving credit to me in that instance. There have been instances, Marcus and I do a session called Teach Like a Student, where we used to share the slides, and we were asked to present the session, and at certain school it didn't work out to have us come there, and they basically recreated our session, the same name, and redid our session. And since then, we no longer share the slides to that session, and we'll never share the slides to those sessions. And it kind of goes back to what Marcus talked to at the beginning, is asking, and Diana, but asking and getting permission, and you as the presenter or the original creator being clear as to what the terms of this sharing is, because in all honesty, I haven't been good about sharing what those terms are, and then feel burned when someone else abuses it. So that's partly on me for not having those clear expectations set.
One strategy that I've found has been really helpful for me here recently is that, I reflected on what is it that I actually didn't want to share, right? So if I do a presentation, I sometimes don't want to share my slides because of the design that goes into them, and because, we've all had those negative instances where someone's used it without our permission or what have you. And so what I've started doing is, instead of sharing my slides, which generally aren't that helpful, the way that I design slides don't have a lot of content on the slides anyway. So I've been creating takeaway resources for the audience, because I do want the information to be helpful, and I want the information to spread. And so I've been designing things that I want to share and giving that out as this additional resource instead of my slides. And that's been really successful for me as a way to navigate that, because there is kind of a pressure almost. Like, people expect you to share your slides, they expect you to share your resources, and I don't think it's 99% of the people, it's not so they can steal your work, it's so that they can take that content with them. And so you can kind of feel bad or guilty about telling someone no. So this strategy has been helpful for me, and I think people have responded well to it, because ultimately I'm still, giving something of value.
That is a really good strategy, Michelle. I like that a lot. And for me, it kind of is about content. Like, if I design a training on Google Classroom, I will freely share that and use it, it's something that you would be able to find in other places too. And so I feel like it's not really those aren't my ideas, but the things that I curate or design that feel like they're more from scratch, I might say, use this as is, but please give me credit. Or if I'm like, hey, go ahead and remix this, but please also share your new design, adding that share alike component of a Creative Commons license. So I really make that determination based on what the creation even is.
So the instance I wanted to share is right along the lines of what Diana's describing. The type of content has some relevance. I attended a session recently at HEC, which we were all able to attend that conference recently in Indianapolis, and I attended a session on accessibility tools by Brenny Coomer, and then I was looking at the calendar and I was looking ahead, and I have a sort of a standing date at one of my elementary schools to do, basically it's like a early release professional development. And so I'm there every month on that same day. And so the principal emailed me and she asked what I had planned for this upcoming PD, and I was like, I don't know. And I started thinking through and thinking about what we'd already done, and I had finally decided that like the content that Brenny shared and that I learned so much from, that was content I thought would be really helpful to share with that building. I don't know if it was the best right thing to do. It was just what I wanted to do. And so I reached out on Twitter and I asked her if I expressed my respect for the session and how much I got out of it myself. But then I also, in that same message, said, would you be willing to let me use that content to train some or to share with some of my teachers at one of my elementary schools? This session is, basically she's done all the grunt work of finding the great, Chrome extensions and things of that nature, great websites for accessibility. And so I just asked, I really appreciate your work and I value it and I would like to share it with my teachers. Is that cool? And she was absolutely willing to do so. And so it was sort of this, sort of virtual high five, like you rock and thank you. And so, I'm sure there are probably better ways to go about it, but that's the angle I took. And what I feel like that does for educators is it further strengthens that mutual respect club, that we're in it together sort of thing. So I'm pretty excited, looking forward to that PD on Wednesday because I get to sort of celebrate another educator and their hard work, and then pass that hard work along to my own teachers.
I think that's great advice in terms of just asking, because very rarely are they going to say no. I think within education, and I've talked about this before, but like there exists some sense of like martyrdom in that it's for the kids. And so often we don't ask because we think like, it's what's best for the kids, and so like accessibility, like that's incredible and what students literally need. And so you could have very easily been like, it's for the kids and I'm just going to use it. But that's not the right thing to do. And in asking, the person's usually flattered and willing to share their resources. So, I certainly am all for asking. And even people outside of education, if you ask them for their resources, they tend to say yes to because they sense that it's for the kids. And so great advice.
Yeah, and honestly, like one of the best parts of that is now, Marcus, you have an established relationship with this person, and I'm willing to bet that the next time she's thinking about designing some PD, she'll reach out to you and just say, hey, I'm getting ready to do this. You got any resources? Or maybe you could build something together that would be even better because you get to do it in a collaborative way.
So, as creators and designers in education, let's pretend that you have a lesson that you're doing with students next week and you're not excited about the current lesson design that you have, or perhaps you're designing PD on something. The tagline in Copyrighteous is a catalyst for creativity in the classroom. So if you were trying to find someone to share some creative materials on your topic, how would you suggest going about that?
Honestly, this is why I always preach that educators need to be on Twitter. It's your 24/7, 7 days a week, 365 PD. And so that's where I go. When I'm on Twitter, I'm crowdsourcing ideas and creativity, and I'm looking for something that's going to inspire me or give me an idea or feed into something that's going to be something great for teachers and therefore for students. So if I was going to give a suggestion, I would say if you're on Twitter, that's where you go. And if you're not on Twitter, get there.
For me, it comes down to relationships. And some of those, are cultivated on social media, like Marcus shared. But really, when I am wanting to share or specifically use the resources of others, I generally go to the people that I've established a connection with. And like I did this recently, give a little shout out to my friend Marcus Vu in Georgia, works with online schools, and has done some really interesting research that I wanted to share with my teachers. And we have, a back and forth established, and we've met at a conference, but we've built that relationship of trust. And I think that's really important in sharing as well. So I don't know if this answers the question, but I think making real connections with people and making sure that the sharing is not just is both ways. I think that is important to me anyway.
So I tend to agree with Michelle. I would start with the organic relationships that I've built. Maybe depending on the situation, it might be appropriate for me to look at some open ed platforms to find resources. But ultimately, I really love creating my own materials from scratch because I think that is an opportunity to design with my personality and for my students and for my teachers. And that's really what the Copyrighteous message is about remixing and finding the power of those original materials.
Love it. Remix. Wicka wicka. I've always said, that good teachers get material from other good teachers. And for me, my sister, she's had been an experienced science teacher for about 10 years, and I became a science teacher. And I just walked right into amazing materials, and it made my life so much easier. And I remixed them and made them personal for me and for my students. And it was a massive jumping point for my career as an educator, and I try to pay it forward with sharing. And Diana, your message of Copyrighteous is so important, and thank you for writing that book because it's incredible. So with that being said, let's stop talking about sharing, and you guys want to have a little fun?
Yes, I do. I do want to have some fun. All right, let's see. Here it is. And I think that we already have a little bit of an advantage, but here's the deal. Every one of us gets to tell one dad joke, and best dad joke wins. And the judges are, we will be judged by our peers. So, one dad joke. Delivery is important. Inflection, important. Content, dad-like. Go.
Okay, I will get us started with some running content because I don't talk about that enough. So here's a running dad joke. What do sprinters eat before a race? Nothing. They fast.
Guys, honestly, I'm not even in the mood to tell jokes. My son, he just asked me, he's like, Dad, can I have a bookmark? And I was like, you're 8 years old. You don't know my name is Chris? I'm not Mark.
That one is cringeworthy.
Okay, here goes. So I ordered a chicken and an egg off of Amazon. I'll let you know.
Nicely done with the I'll let you know. That was very dad.
Attribution to Bored Panda. I didn't make that up.
All right, my turn. Do you guys want to hear a joke about a piece of paper? Never mind. It's terrible. Thank you, BuzzFeed.
If I'm being honest, I still don't get Marcus's, so after this episode is done, I'm going to have him explain it to me, because maybe I'm the dumbest person in the world, but went over my head. But thank you guys for sharing in the conversation on sharing, and I feel like there's just one last thing we have to say. But before we get off, Tuesday is #RedForEd, and speaking of sharing, the teachers in Indiana are getting together and sharing in the power of what education is, and that's pretty exciting. So one final thing,
And that's the 411.